Dirty, musty, stark, stale. All of these terms could have been used to describe the interior of the large, dark network of hallways and spaces. There were no sounds upon my entry, no presence making itself known while I explored the labyrinth of the facility, now closed, legally condemned, and totally off-limits, as posted by the high-end institution known for having numerous contracts with the U.S. military. So when I say I was taking a huge risk just to be trespassing on the premises in the first place, you know I mean it. The thing is, it was utterly irresistible. I was compelled to understand more about the building, about the organization that stood out in my small town like a blistering sore for several years, ever since they seized ownership of the property and moved in, so to speak. You gotta understand, this is a small town USA community. People here know everybody else and everything about those people. But when this place set up shop, it introduced a construct that people here did not take to very well. Secrecy. I mean, of course it was due to the contract stipulations demanded by certain benefactors, including rumored associations with government agencies, so covert operations were an underscored requirement. But the things people said they heard, said they saw, made dispositions worse as curiosity fueled the communal fire. Frequency of instances increased, sightings of deranged humanoids devouring forest animals in the woods, agonized screaming, barely discernible, muffled by the walls and other obstructions of the building itself, heard on occasions on the stillest of nights. One day, everything ceased. Cars were seen being towed from the parking lot, while large green and black trucks loaded contents of the building's interior, all packed in uniform crates, making it impossible to tell what may have been in them. Certain townsfolk say that the remnants of animal testing were carried out and into the trucks via the large gray tote-like boxes. Others say it was the staff, and that's why whoever had been called into action had towed all the vehicles from the lot. In my opinion, at least before coming here, I pretty much figured it was just randomized computer equipment and the like. Now, however, I find myself second-guessing my previous assumptions. The place was much like one would expect for an unoccupied building. Rooms were mostly devoid of furniture and fixtures, halls vacant and cavernous, unlit and visually boring. Small holes in the walls on both sides signified the recent presence of wall hangings, such as pictures and company slogans. I was scanning each and every inch that I possibly could observe, searching for anything that may help me to understand the dynamics of the organization that, until very recently, occupied these halls, conducting secret research. Each of the top 3 floors boasted nothing to satisfy my interests. Everything blank, empty, and without clues to anyone's previous presence. Never mind the deliberation of information relevant to my snooping. There was a sub-level to the building, and I'd been saving it for last, hopeful that I would first discover what I was looking for before I would descend into the bowels of the structure. Finding nothing, I was nothing short of compelled to head as far down the stairwell as those ominous steps would take me. Hindsight is enlightening, and I really wish I would have just left when I had the chance. The upper floors were dark, sure, but the fading light of the setting sun outside cast enough illumination through the tinted solar windows, just enough to sparsely distribute enough light to enable sight and detail without the assistance of a flashlight for the majority of my endeavor. However, the stark contrast of the basement, facilitated from a lack of natural light, demanded the use of some personal light source. The flashlight I had brought with me was in my hand and switched on before my foot had landed at the bottom of the stairs, just outside the ominous door that boasted the words in black letters over top of a yellow background, "Authorized personnel only." Before I had even reached out to touch the handle, I believed it to be locked. To my utter surprise, the handle turned with ease. The space before me was a little disorienting without the fixtures of specialized equipment and apparatus, making it difficult to tell exactly what this large room was. It was spacious, slightly dusty, and the floor crunched as I traversed towards its center. 3 of the walls were composed of nothing but flat, solid cement, painted gloss white, lending a feel of sterilization. The 4th wall was no wall at all. Instead, it appeared to be only a series of large window frames spanning the length of the room, each and every one busted out, still having the clinging remnants of glass attached to most of their circumferences. That's when I identified the clear correlation. The crunch on the floor was that of tiny shards of thick, broken glass. When I walked over towards the gaping maws leading into an inky void, I noticed 2 things of interest. First, beyond the borders of the broken glass was another small room. Lining the back wall of this separate space were cages. Numerous large cages, maybe 100 of them. Secondly, in front of what I would soon discover to be observation glass, the wall jutted outward into kind of 3x3 protrusion. On the top sat what looked to be a modern television set. Directly in front of it was an attached black keyboard. It was a computer monitor. I scanned the area beyond the glass. Dark, dried stains were splotched all over the open floor space, partially concealed by an ever-accumulating layer of dust. No glass. Whatever had broken the glass had done so from that side. I don't know why I did it. Maybe an attribution to operational behavior, but as I went to walk away, I seemed to almost instinctively hit the little button with a picture of a sun on the keyboard, indicatively predicting it to have absolutely no effect. My heart jumped from place, and I thought I'd nearly shit myself when it was followed by a succession of beeps, clicks, and flashing lights. The power was supposed to be off. I was almost sure of it. And still, the computer proceeded to boot up. I'd never seen an operating system like this until it had booted up to a maintained background. On the glowing screen was a Windows desktop-like display, 2 icons placed upon a slate black background. There was no taskbar or start menu, just a trash can-looking icon and another that looked similar to a file folder. The name beneath the folder read 176B. A seemingly random combination of letters and numbers with no special meaning. I searched a bit for a mouse or something, but was unable to locate one. A thought entered my head, and I decided to give it a try. I reached out and touched the file icon with my right index finger, and a display window opened up. It was a touch screen. Contained within the new file window was a massive list of video files. I couldn't understand why they decided to leave this behind or how it could have been forgotten, but intrigue forced me to put this concept behind me until later, the content before my eyes demanding my immediate attention. I took a deep breath and touched the first few items on the list. When the player window opened up, I didn't recognize the program at all, but my attention quickly turned to the white-coated man, now presented from the shoulders up on the display monitor.
This is Dr. Jason Davis, Research Log 0067. The rats have been responding much better to the new behavioral agent 176B, much better than anticipated. It seems we've surpassed the extinction curve and making desired effects stable. The generation of new neural pathways in the left hemisphere were deemed inefficient in achieving long-lasting effects. The variable resulting in compensation of this seems to be introduced through chemical agents reacting with the pineal gland. Suffice it to say, the rat experiments have all gone so well, we've begun testing on chimps, the closest we've come to human trials. There seems to be a 5% or so of the population that has had an adverse effect to the serum, nearly identical to the rat population. Personally, if the results of the rat experiments serve as a model for behavioral change in ape population, in comparison to the control group of 20 animals, then I would recommend that human trials commence immediately, as the awaited breakthrough has indeed occurred.
The video reached its end, and the black screen resided upon the monitor, devoid of depiction and leaving me to my thoughts. I'd only started to wrap my mind around what I had witnessed, still unable to make the necessary correlations, when the blank black screen flash dissolved, and the video file list was once again on display. I wanted to watch another, but my movement seemed somehow restricted, taken aback by apprehension. I swallowed hard, took in a deep breath of the stale, musty air, and reached forward, scrolling my finger down about halfway through the list, and then touched upon a second video file.
This is Dr. Jason Davis, Research Log 0193. Human trials have moved into Stage 2, and facilitator-based development has commenced with, once again, results more promising than ever, and could have ever been predicted. The behavioral agent, designed to isolate negative areas of cognition associated with aggression, competition, and autonomy, have been removed from the primary processing functions, theologically separating good from evil. This, of course, has a side effect of prominent complacency. Subjects administered with 176B are compliant and docile, willing to perform whatever task is designated without a desire for compensation or reward. Productivity related to task achievement only declines from that of subjects within the control group alongside fatigue, hunger, or other biological imperial functions at about a rate of 30% on the gradient slope. What's interesting is that subjects express no desire for rest or food, only taking part in either after direction to do so, signifying the need for higher order social systems. In correspondence with both rat and ape populations, about 5% of human subjects have a reverse effect, equal to in intensity as complacency in the other 95%. Aggressive, primal, undesired behavioral traits are isolated as with previous species populations. And just as they say, instead of isolation and removal from primary function, it's isolated and then forms all relevant primary functions. These subjects are highly aggressive, rageful, and violent. My colleagues find their contorted faces most disturbing. I'll say the intense looks of malevolence in their eyes, their stretched and tightened, furry expressions on their faces, and that screaming. Well, as I'm sure you can hear, that screaming in the background is quite unsettling. More so when heard directly by the human ear and not through some recording device, let me assure you. These subjects are being kept isolated from one another under maximum security, while the majority of the population, The observed 95% has now been integrated into one group. Observations of subsequent social behavior to follow.
The screen once again displayed nothing but a black, glossy void, the same process as the last video when it ended, and I knew it would only be a moment before the list would be presented to me once more. By this time, my thoughts lingered on the information I had just been privy to. Human experiments? Good and evil? I know the main subject of the experiment was the deliberated passive 95%, but it was the other 5% that would not release my cognition. Aggressive, violent, and that screaming. I remembered that Dr. Jason Davis guy stated that the sound was much worse in person, and I recoiled at that thought, for the shrill echoes threatened to haunt my dreams for the rest of my life, and the thought of a more unnerving version of them made my mind recoil. I feared what I might witness. 1,000 thoughts were running through my head, but I had to know. I had to scroll down and click the final video entry in an attempt to find out what happened here. Discovering what they were doing proved insufficient to quench my inquisitive thirst. Once I had reached the bottom of the list, I touched upon the final video file listed.
It's me, log 0200 something. I don't know what happened. We must have underestimated their strength. One of the subjects scheduled for termination broke free. It's chaos down here. My God, there's blood everywhere. They just sat there. The passive social group, they didn't even care. As previously observed and documented, no detrimental effect on cognition resulted from the administration of 176B. They're smart. One got free and just went right for the rest of them. We couldn't stop them. I've never seen a human being move that fast or execute such a display of strength. Once they hit the general population, they just slaughtered them. The passives just sat there, screaming and letting it happen, allowing themselves to be torn apart in agony, but doing nothing about it. The rest of them just watched and showed no emotion. My God, women, fucking kids, they're all dead. My staff, they tried to step in. They're all gone. I have no other choice but to... A
pale human hand reached out and gripped Dr. Davis by his face just before the video ended, and the screen went black for a final time. The broken glass, the crates, the hushed activity. Everything all started to make horrifying sense. But why was this thing down here? Why had such a significant piece of equipment ended up getting left behind? Then, I heard an unsettling noise from the space beyond the observation windows. Unnerving, resonant, and demonstrating a revelation I was only now coming to. This stuff was left in place because no one had set foot down here since that last file was recorded.